I always knew the savannah had its own rules. Animals don't show up when you want them to. They show up when you've earned it. But that day was different. The sky had a deeper gold than usual. The wind, which normally whispered through the tall grass, was quiet, almost respectful, like even nature was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I didn't know what, but I could feel it. I woke up before sunrise, like I always do on these trips. Set up the tripod on a small hill, a spot that gave me a wide view of the plains. On the left side, a muddy puddle reflected the soft blue of the sky. In the distance, a few zebras were walking slowly, and on the right, nothing. Just the endless horizon and that ocean of grass swaying like waves. That's where I was betting something would appear. I got down on my knees, adjusted the lens, took a deep breath. The sound of the camera focusing felt way too loud in that sacred silence. But I kept going. A group of antelope had just started running far off, kicking up a golden cloud of dust that danced in the sunlight. That was it. The perfect shot. The motion. The blurred background, the glowing dust. Everything aligned. I inhaled, held the frame. 1, 2. And just before the third shot, something shifted. It wasn't a sound. It wasn't a scent. It was a feeling. That primal instinct you can't explain, like the air suddenly got heavier. Like someone was right there, just behind me. And then it happened. I felt it, a weight, a touch, right on my left shoulder. It wasn't a branch. It wasn't the wind. It was warm, solid, alive. My heart froze. I didn't move. My hand was still on the camera, my eyes still on the lens. But my mind was screaming. Breathe. Slowly. Breathe. I didn't turn around right away. Maybe out of fear. Maybe out of respect. Maybe because some part of me already knew. This moment was too sacred to break with sudden movement. The weight stayed there. It didn't press, it didn't hurt. It was like it was saying, I'm here. When I finally built up the courage to slowly turn my head, my eyes met the impossible. A lion, not just any lion, a white lion, massive, majestic. Golden eyes locked onto mine as if studying me, both of his front paws resting gently on my shoulder, like he wanted to see what I was looking at. Like he wanted to understand that noisy black box I was hiding behind. And the most unbelievable part, he didn't roar, didn't growl, didn't show his teeth. He just looked in silence. And I looked too, from the corner of my eye. But I looked. It felt like time had stopped. In that fraction of forever, I understood what no wildlife photography book could ever teach. Some encounters aren't meant to be explained, just experienced. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from emotion. Because deep down, I knew that what I was living, no lens could ever capture. And before I continue this story, I want to ask you something. Let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And if this story already touched your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video and share it. Because when we share stories like this, we spread empathy, hope, and humanity. Now take a deep breath with me, because I haven't told you yet what he did after looking into my eyes. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Maybe it was 10 seconds, maybe it was a minute. Time doesn't work the same when a lion has his paws on your shoulder. Everything slows down. Or maybe everything just becomes real, sharper, like your senses finally wake up. My breath was shallow. My skin felt electric. And yet, I wasn't afraid. He looked at me like no animal ever had. Not as prey, not as a threat, just present. Aware, like two souls from two different worlds meeting in the middle of nowhere with no need for words. Then, without warning, he gently lifted his paws. I felt the weight leave my shoulder, and my body reacted before my brain could process. I fell forward on my hands, my heart racing now that the spell had broken. I turned around slowly, very slowly, expecting to see him still there. But he wasn't. He was already walking away. No rush. No panic, just calm steps through the grass, his white mane glowing under the sun. He walked like a king who didn't need an audience, like he knew he had just given me something. And that was enough. I stayed on the ground, my camera forgotten. My hands were shaking now, not from fear, from awe. I looked around. Nothing. No other animals. No noise. Just the soft crunch of his paws disappearing into the bush. And that's when I realized I had no photo. I hadn't clicked, not once. I was so caught in the moment, in the eyes, in the silence, that I never raised the camera. That thought hit me like a punch to the chest. I scrambled up and grabbed the camera, checked the last shot. The antelopes, just the antelopes. No lion, no paws, no magic. Damn it, I whispered to myself. No one's going to believe this. I stood there for a while, camera hanging at my side, just staring at the path he'd walked. I kept hoping he'd come back. That maybe, just maybe, he'd give me a second chance to capture the impossible. But he didn't. Instead, something else happened. As I packed my gear, still numb from it all, I heard a sound. A soft rustle. Not from behind, not from the same direction he'd gone. This time, it came from the side. I turned quickly, expecting maybe a zebra or another antelope. But no, it was a cub, a lion cub, small, white like him, hidden in the tall grass, watching me. It wasn't moving, just staring. I froze again, not out of fear this time, but confusion. Where had it come from? Was it his? Why had he left it? I knelt slowly, trying not to scare it. The cub didn't flinch, just tilted its head, curious, maybe even a little sad. Its tiny sides moved with each breath, and only in tow I noticed it was limping, injured. Something about the way it held one paw off the ground. It wasn't a bad wound, but enough to make you wonder if it could keep up with the pride. If it had been left behind, or if it had been brought here, brought to me. I looked again, back toward where the adult lion had gone. Nothing, no movement, just silence. Like the savanna itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. And in that moment, I had to decide. I was hours away from camp. I had no equipment for rescue. I wasn't trained in wildlife rehabilitation. And still, there was no way I was leaving that cub alone. Not after what had just happened. Not after he looked me in the eye. I reached slowly into my pack, pulled out a bottle of water and a soft cloth I used to clean lenses. I moved forward, inch by inch, whispering, "Hey there, it's okay. I'm not gonna hurt you." The cub didn't run. It just watched me. And then, something I'll never forget, it crawled toward me, not walked. Crawled, like it knew it couldn't stay alone. Like it knew I was the one it had been left for. When it finally reached me, it pressed its small head against my knee, and I lost it. My throat closed. My eyes filled with tears I didn't expect. I hadn't cried in years, not even when I lost my father. But this was something else. I wrapped the cloth gently around its paw. It whimpered softly. I whispered back, I know it hurts." I don't remember how long I sat there, holding that tiny creature in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by golden grass and silence. But I remember what I felt, that I'd just been given a responsibility I didn't ask for, but couldn't refuse. That lion, that father, I'm sure of it, didn't leave that cub by accident. He chose me. Me, a guy with a camera and too many doubts. I looked at the horizon once more, half expecting to see him watching from afar. But again, nothing, just the wind. But it wasn't empty anymore. It felt like a whisper. Take care of him. And so I did. I lifted the cub gently, cradled it in my arms, and began the long walk back to camp, my heart pounding not from fear, but from the weight of what I was carrying. The sun was starting to set. The sky was turning orange and violet, and behind me, somewhere in the bush, a lion had made a choice I still didn't fully understand. But I would, soon, because what I didn't know then was that this was only the beginning. By the time I got back to camp, the sky was bleeding orange across the horizon. The sun was sinking low, casting long shadows through the dry grass, and every step I took felt heavier, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of what I was carrying. The cub was asleep in my arms, breathing softly, almost weightless. Every time I looked down at him, something tightened in my chest. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I just knew I couldn't leave him behind. Not after what had happened. As soon as I passed the rough wooden perimeter that marked our little research post, I heard voices rising. First, Diana, our lead wildlife vet. Then Ahmed and Sophia, two of the assistants. They'd been sitting near the storage container where we kept the supplies. The second they saw what I was holding, they all jumped up like I'd walked in holding a bomb. "Oh my God, what did you do?" Diana ran to me, eyes wide in disbelief. "Did you touch him? Did you bring him here? Do you have any idea what this means?" I froze, knees locking up, and said something barely above a whisper. "He chose me. His father left him with me." The words didn't make much logical sense, but they were the only ones that felt right. I hadn't chased this cub. He came to me, and the adult lion, that white lion, he walked away and left me there with him. Diana looked at me like I'd just lost my mind. "His father? You saw another lion? Are you sure about what you're saying?" And before I could even answer, she took the cub from my arms with practiced, gentle hands and brought him under the tarp-covered area where we kept our basic medical gear. As she examined the paw injury, I told them everything. From the moment I'd been kneeling behind my camera, to the silent presence on my shoulder, to the eyes of that lion studying me, to the way he disappeared and left the cub behind. I told them about the gaze, about how it didn't feel like a random encounter. It felt like something chosen. When I finished talking, no one said anything. Diana cleaned the wound in silence. Sophia stared at me, eyes narrowed, not with judgment, but with something closer to fear and awe. Ahmed scratched the back of his head, like he was trying to reason through something that didn't belong to logic. Finally, Diana broke the silence. "Do you know what it means to have a white lion approach a human without attacking? Do you realize how rare they are? And now we have a cub, a white cub, injured, left in our care. This isn't just biology. This is—" She paused. "This is something else." We treated the cub. The wound wasn't severe, but he was clearly dehydrated and shaken. That night we took turns watching over him. We gave him water in tiny drops. We whispered. We sat quietly beside him, trying to understand what we had just become part of. My shift was between 2 and 5 a.m. I sat beside him, not making much noise, just breathing slowly, hoping he could feel that he wasn't alone. At around 4:30, he opened his eyes, looked right at me, and then, to my complete disbelief, crawled forward inch by inch and rested his little head against my leg. I didn't say a word. I just let the tears come, quietly. I hadn't cried like that in years. Not even when I buried my father. But this broke something open. The next morning, everything had changed. Ahmed was reinforcing the perimeter with extra wire. Sophia was scribbling non-stop in her notebook, documenting every twitch and sound the cub made. Diana, she was obsessed. Why would a lion leave his cub with us? She kept asking aloud. Unless he knew he couldn't protect him anymore. Maybe he was sick, old, injured. Maybe he lost the pride. But giving the cub to us, that's something else entirely. I listened, but I didn't speak, because deep inside, I didn't believe it was just instinct. I believed that Lion made a choice, that it wasn't surrender. It was trust, a message. And somehow, we were the ones who'd been chosen to receive it. 3 days later, everything changed again. I was sorting through my photography gear near my tent when I heard it, soft at first, then growing louder. Heavy footsteps. Not stomping, not rushing, just steady, intentional. I looked up and locked eyes with Diana. She was already standing. Sophia climbed the observation platform. Ahmed froze where he was, eyes locked on the eastern tree line. And then he appeared, the white lion, alone, massive, glowing in the afternoon light. He walked straight toward the camp, not charging, not stalking, just walking, like he knew exactly where he was going. The cub was lying in the shade just a few meters away. He lifted his head when the lion came into view, and I swear to you, they looked at each other, really looked, and in that moment, something passed between them. Not words, not roars, something else, something you feel more than understand. The lion stopped about 60 feet from the camp, sat down, didn't growl, didn't move, just watched. And we didn't dare breathe. He stayed there for nearly an hour, just sitting, watching, like he needed to see for himself that we were doing it right, like he had left something precious behind and now needed to be sure it was safe. And then, without a sound, he stood up again and walked away, calm, silent, gone. It took several minutes for anyone to speak. Diana was the first. Her voice cracked. "He didn't come to take him back," she whispered. "He just came to check on him." And no one disagreed, because we all felt the same thing. That lion knew. He knew exactly what he was doing. He trusted us, and he had come to say, one last time, take care of him. That night I sat outside my tent with the cub sleeping near my feet. The sky was wide and dark, full of stars blinking like quiet witnesses. And right then, in the middle of the African savanna, under a sky so vast it made you feel small, I understood what it meant to be chosen, not by fame, not by luck, but by something older than both, something wild, something sacred. And what I didn't know was that being chosen would come with a cost, because something else was watching, not just him, but other eyes. Eyes that weren't kind, eyes that weren't patient, and very soon they would show their claws. That night, something shifted. I don't mean in the weather. The sky was clear, the wind was still, the stars were sharp. No, I'm talking about something deeper, a tension you can't explain. Like a hum in the air that doesn't make sound, but makes your skin react. It started just after midnight. I was on the third watch, sitting outside the main tent with the cub curled beside my feet. He was sleeping better now, breathing slow and steady, like he finally felt safe. I had one hand resting on the camera, not because I expected to use it, but because it gave me a sense of purpose, something to anchor me in the silence. That's when I heard it. A branch snapped, not close, not loud, but far enough to make my ears perk up. At first I thought it was just a hyena. We'd seen a few tracks around the perimeter earlier that day. Then another sound, softer this time, like grass being pushed aside. I stood slowly, didn't want to wake the cub. My flashlight was in my back pocket, but I didn't reach for it yet. I just stared into the dark. And then I saw them. Eyes. 3 sets, low to the ground, wide apart. Not cats, not hyenas, not human. Painted dogs. Wild dogs of the savannah. They stood just outside the range of our floodlight, which barely reached the edge of the tree line. I recognized their lean shapes, the patchy fur, the erratic movement. They were smart, fast, coordinated, and right now, they were watching us. I felt my chest tighten. We'd had encounters with painted dogs before, but never inside the camp. Never this close. And never when we had something that could be seen as prey, like a wounded lion cub. I bent down slowly, trying not to show fear, picked the cub up gently. He stirred but didn't cry. I stepped backward toward the tent, my eyes locked on the shadows. The dogs didn't move. They didn't blink. They were waiting. That's the thing about predators. They know when you're vulnerable. And in that moment I was alone. No one else was awake. No weapons, no time to shout. Just instinct. I reached the tent flap and slipped inside, setting the cub down on the cot. Then I grabbed the flashlight and turned it on, sweeping it toward the tree line. Nothing, just empty grass and silence. But I knew they hadn't gone far. They were watching, waiting for weakness, testing us. By morning, the tension hadn't left. I told the others what happened. Diana immediately started reinforcing the perimeter, adding noise traps with tin cans and twine. Ahmed went out to search for tracks. He came back after an hour, pale and silent. "They were here," he said simply. "At least 5 of them, moving in a crescent like a flank. This wasn't curiosity. It was a test run." Sophia looked at the cub with a new kind of worry in her eyes. "If they're planning to come back," she started but didn't finish. None of us wanted to say it. The cub was still too weak to fend for himself. And we were scientists, observers, not warriors. That afternoon I watched the cub from a distance. He was stronger, walking better, curious. He batted at a fallen leaf like any kitten would. For a moment, I let myself believe everything might be okay. But deep down, I knew that once blood is sensed in the wild, it's not forgotten. That night we stayed on high alert, flashlights ready, traps set. No one slept more than 2 hours. I took the second shift and climbed up the lookout tower with my long lens and a radio. I scanned the horizon every 5 minutes. For a while, nothing. Then, movement, quick and low. But it wasn't a dog this time. It was a human, one. Moving fast, crouched, dressed in dark clothes. Poachers. Damn it. I reached for the radio but stopped. The man was alone, and he was too close to the traps. I waited. He stepped right into the tin can line. The sound rang out like a metallic scream. Within seconds, Ahmed and Diana were outside. The man bolted. He didn't look back, just vanished into the bush. But we all knew he'd be back. The cub. He wasn't just a rare animal anymore. He was a white lion cub, injured, vulnerable, valuable. News spreads in whispers through the bush, through rangers, guides, locals. Word had gotten out, and now the camp wasn't just a research site. It was a target. We moved the cub into the medical tent, reinforced the zippers with padlocks, took turns staying inside. But every sound outside made our skin crawl. Every gust of wind felt like a footstep. Every bird call sounded like a signal. By the 4th day, Diana said what we were all thinking. "We can't stay here, not like this." "But where do we take him?" I asked. "If we move him too far, he could relapse. If we stay, he might not survive the next attack." She looked at me with tired eyes. "You're the one he trusts. If he needs to be moved, you'll have to carry him." I didn't argue. I just nodded. And as the sun went down again, painting the sky in bruised purples and reds, I sat by the cub's side and whispered softly, "You didn't choose me for nothing, did you?" He opened his eyes, looked at me, and let out the smallest sound. Not a growl, not a cry, just breath. As if saying, "No, I didn't." And I knew right then. The decision had been made. We would leave the camp at dawn, but night still had plans for us. We left before the sun had touched the grass. The air was thick with dew and silence. No one said much as we packed what we could. First aid kits, water, 1 rifle just in case, not to use, but to show we weren't helpless. The cub was wrapped gently in a thick cloth and placed inside a crate with soft padding, but he didn't resist. He looked at me the whole time, calm, trusting, as if he knew this wasn't just a trip. It was a crossing, a passage back to something older than us all. The plan was simple. Head west for 2 hours through the low brush, away from the area the dogs and the poacher had been seen, until we reached the ranger's cabin. A protected zone near the hills where reinforcements could come, or at least the signal was strong enough to call for extraction. But simple plans don't exist in the wild. There are only intentions, and then there's what nature allows. The first hour was smooth. Sophia led the way with the compass. Ahmed checked the ground for tracks, and Diana walked beside me as I carried the crate like it held my own blood. The cub didn't sleep. He just watched, eyes wide. Every once in a while he blinked slow, like a silent nod. "You're doing good. Keep going." That was enough to push through the soreness in my shoulders, but when we reached the edge of the dry riverbed, Ahmed stopped cold. He raised one hand without turning back. That's all it took. We froze. His body was tense, crouched, scanning the sand. Then he stood and whispered something that made my stomach drop. Fresh prints, 3 dogs, circling pattern. They were tracking us. Diana cursed under her breath. Sophia turned pale. I looked at the crate, and for the first time the cub let out a low, almost inaudible growl. Not of fear, of warning. I don't know how, but he knew. He could feel them, the pressure, the hunger. I nodded. We keep moving. No noise, no stops. We crossed the riverbed fast, keeping close to the trees, changing direction every few hundred meters to break the scent trail. The heat was rising. The ground cracked under our boots. I could feel sweat dripping down my spine, but I didn't stop. Every time my arms started to shake, I looked at those golden eyes behind the mesh of the crate, and they held me together. Then came the sound. Distant at first, yipping, chaotic, like laughter run through teeth. The dogs. Closer than we thought. They'd picked up our path. We ran. No time to argue, no time to plan, just instinct. The crate bounced in my grip, but I didn't let go. I heard branches breaking behind us, Diana shouting, Sophia tripping, Ahmed firing one warning shot into the air, but it wasn't enough to stop them. We were prey now, all of us, just one mistake away from becoming another story the bush would swallow. Then, without warning, the ground disappeared beneath me. I'd stepped wrong, a sinkhole or a collapsed den. I fell hard, the crate flying from my hands. I landed with a grunt, the wind knocked out of me. Pain shot through my side, but I crawled forward immediately, searching for the crate. "Where is he?" I gasped. "Where?" And then I saw it. The crate had rolled but remained closed. The cub inside, eyes locked on me, breathing fast but safe. I reached for it. And then I heard the growl. But it wasn't from the dogs. It came from behind me. Deep, rasping, ancient. I turned my head slowly. He was there. The white lion. Like a ghost through smoke, he stepped forward from the brush, massive and silent, eyes burning with something I had only seen once before when he touched my shoulder. But this was different. This was not curiosity. This was protection. He didn't roar. He didn't charge. He just stood tall as the wild dogs began to emerge from the trees around us, 3 of them, snarling, eyes on the crate, tails low. Ready? But when they saw him, they stopped, and then they backed away. Not all at once, not fast, but with a kind of fear that only something ancient can command. The white lion walked forward, slow, deliberate, placing himself between me and them. They didn't challenge, they didn't dare. One by one they turned and melted back into the shadows, gone. I couldn't breathe. I was still on the ground, bleeding from my elbow, my legs shaking, but I couldn't move. Then he looked at me. Just one look, and I swear I heard it. Thank you. No words, no sound, just that gaze, like lightning through your soul. He stepped toward the crate. The cub inside stood up, tail flicking once, and for a moment they stared at each other. The cub let out a soft sound, like a sigh or a question. The lion didn't answer. He just turned, looked back at me one last time, and then slowly disappeared into the savannah. I picked up the crate and stood. My hands were trembling. My body was on fire, but I started walking again. I didn't look back. The others caught up with me 20 minutes later, eyes wide, breathless, and when I told them what happened, no one questioned. They just believed. Because out there, some things don't need proof. They just are. We made it to the ranger's cabin before sundown. The cub recovered fully in the weeks that followed, strong, proud, untamed. And one day when the time came, we opened the gates and let him go. No collar, no tag, no fence. He turned to look at me one last time, then vanished into the wild, back to the life he was born for. And me? I never took a picture of any of it. Not of the touch, not of the fall, not of the lion, but I carry the moment in my bones. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't meant to be captured. They're meant to be lived and remembered forever.